The best weapons in Warframe are the ones that can leverage most if not all of the multipliers. So I was super excited when I heard that the Tenet Plinx was on the way. So you can imagine my disappointment when I saw 12% status chance. But hey, perhaps the weapon performs better than it looks.
Tenet Plinx is an extremely powerful secondary weapon that has seen very few direct changes, but many indirect changes throughout its time in Warframe. This weapon, on its non-Tenet variant, is nothing more than a pea shooter, but on its Tenet variant we get some very interesting new mechanics, plus a lot of buffs to the normal fire. Tenet Plinx has high crit stats and low status chance, with a primary fire that provides zero recoil and acts as a pistol with a fairly fast battery reload. It has fairly high damage per shot, its hit scan, and has only puncture and hit as its damage types, with the ability to get one element for free since it's a Tenet weapon. This is fairly straightforward, however the Tenet variant of the Plinx gets a secondary fire that charges a shot, consuming all of its ammo and shooting a projectile that can either stick to surfaces or enemies. Enemies hit directly by this take a guaranteed impact proc, and the damage dealt to them is affected multiplicatively to other sources by galvanic shots. The bullet then starts pulling nearby enemies towards it and finally explodes after a small delay, dealing pure radiation damage. After shooting the secondary fire, it has a higher recharge delay on the battery, going up to 2 seconds from the usual 0.8. As you can tell, as a mechanic, the alt fire of the Tenet Plinx is really similar to Stalta's, but it's a bit more interesting in terms of mechanics. By far the weirdest one is that the tooltip of this weapon simply lists the damage of the secondary fire completely wrong. I have not seen any other weapons have this, but even though it clearly states that the damage of the alt fire is 100 impact and then 500 radiation at base, it seems like it is 1000 base damage for both, so 1000 impact and then 1000 radiation. Magazine capacity increases your alt fire total damage by 10% per extra round in the mag. This means that adding 40% magazine capacity to a mod will give you 40% more damage to the alt fire since the gun starts with 10 bullets. You can think of this damage exactly like an expel. It is a final damage multiplier after everything, so it's really strong to abuse it. Even though the explosion itself is fully affected by prime fulmination, the pull mechanic isn't, but this does not make the mod useless by any means. In the past, this weapon was considered OP because the mod synth charge used to work with the alternative fire. Because of this, Plinx became everyone's go-to weapon for many missions, including Disruption, Eidolons, Profit Takers, and the Index. This mechanic was removed a long time ago, but recently D has revived this mechanic and made it way better. Introducing the new two secondary Arcanes, Secondary Surge and Secondary Fortifier. Secondary Fortifier is fairly known. It steals overguard from enemies that possess it, but also deals 8 times the damage to their overguard. Secondary Surge, however, is a bit more interesting, as this is one of the only weapons that can fully abuse it. It gives your next shot a damage multiplier up to 8 times after casting your ability that scales with how much energy you have after your ability was casted. This effect can stack, so a user can cast multiple abilities before firing the shot. This can easily be overlooked if one doesn't test this arcane, and this means that someone using this arcane does not need to use Prime Flow or Arcane Battery onto their Warframe necessarily. Secondary Surge only grants this boost for one shot, so it synergizes perfectly with the Plinx's alt fire, working on both the initial hit and the AoE that comes after. You can have this pistol as a literal pocket nuke without the need of galvanized mods at all, just because the base damage when combined with this arcane is stupid high. Alright, now that you understand the mechanics of this weapon, it's time to take a look at the builds, starting with maximum AoE. One thing I forgot to add is that all of these builds will use a Toxin Progenitor. So the first build is a pretty straightforward max AoE build, which will include Prime Fulmination for the extra AoE damage with maximum amount of multi-shot, a Prime Convulsion to combine with the innate Toxin from the Valence bonus to get Corrosive onto our weapon, and then we add just maximum crits with Creeping Bullseye, Prime Target Cracker, Hornet Strike for the extra base damage, and then Tainted Clip for the final 60% multiplier that acts as a Bane mode. Secondary Surge will be the arcane of our choice, but you can easily take this to a secondary Deadhead if you aim for headshots, or a secondary Merciless if you aim for just the ground level, but I prefer secondary Surge because the damage is enough already if you just spam this weapon, and for the one time that you will spam a bit more abilities, secondary Surge will boost your damage dramatically. This will be the build I suggest to people picking up this weapon for the first time, or anyone not interested to go anywhere above Steel Path. Simple playstyle, you shoot your alt fire, you swap weapons and play with your primary fire for 1 mag, then you switch back to your Plinx and shoot the alt fire again. You do this over and over again since your alt fire needs to recharge, and it's a very handy way to clear a group of enemies including Eximus enemies, and probably the most comfortable build for this weapon. Up next, the Void Cascade build, revolving around secondary fortifier. This build is very similar to the previous one, with the only real difference being that we replace Prime Fulmination with Galvanization. This is because the multiplicative CO of this gun will help us deal a lot more damage to those Trax enemies, along with secondary fortifier to quickly get rid of their overguard and gain 8 times more damage to the alt fire towards that overguard. The Incredulous base damage will take care of the rest of his health. This is a very strong choice for Void Cascades as a secondary, one-shotting Thrax on base Steel Path up to level 500 on its own, and up to level cap with the help of any primer since it has multiplicative CO. One huge plus is that the Arcane of secondary fortifier also steals part of the enemy's overguard, and with the amount of Eximus enemies spawning on those high levels along with those Trax you're gonna be killing, you will feel like you're playing Rhino with the amount of overguard you will have. This makes this build amazing outside of Void Cascade for those that crave the old-fashioned level cap game modes of survival, interception, or defense. Once you reach the level cap in those missions, which takes an approximate of 9 hours, every enemy becomes an Eximus, so using this will give you permanent overguard. Lastly, the Disruption build, which was used for the intro to this video. And for the Disruption build is once again very similar, only replacing Lethal Torrent for Expel Grenadier mode. This is because we want as much damage as possible to the faction that we're fighting, and a primed Expel mode will do way better, but as you can see, I don't have one. This is enough for you to get way more damage. Secondary Surge once again is in, because the Disruption targets do not have any overguard, so Secondary Surge will give you once again the most damage per shot that you can get, allowing you to completely one-shot those Demolists. Realistically, all this build needs is a primer, be it a melee one or a primary one. For primaries, I suggest a corrosive called Bubonico, and for the melees, I suggest a gas called Vastilok with a Panzer to help you with the viral procs. Both of these will make your Tenet Plinx hit insanely hard and making it one of the strongest secondaries in the entire game. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. It took me longer to release it because I had been sick and I couldn't get myself to do the voiceover. Regardless, if you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe to not miss the next one, which will be about the Quantavanto. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.